My mother was the Queen for a very long time. And although you kind of know that this might happen, you don't really think about it very much. Not least of all because the monarchy is about continuity. But I think for my brother, this is something he's been waiting for.
Royal siblings are known to get into a lot of disagreements, and this conflict between King Charles and Princess Anne is no different. The cause of this dispute is an inheritance currently occupied by the Princess Royal, but rightfully willed to the current king. Will there be a power toss of the property? Who will have the final say? Join us as we discuss the battle for Gatcombe Park and what Princess Anne said to King Charles that caused such a stir. The Princess Royal's inheritance. Princess Anne, the only daughter of Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip, has always been regarded as one of the hardest-working members of the royal family. When Queen Elizabeth II died in 2022, there was a lot of talk about what Princess Anne might have inherited, both materially and in terms of responsibilities. Although the family did not make the will public, it is safe to say that the princess inherited not only finances and sentiment items from her mother. She has also inherited a host of new responsibilities as the most hardworking and trustworthy children of the Queen. Looking into Queen Elizabeth II's personal wealth with a keen eye, it is evident that her wealth was largely tied to her private estates, most notably Sandringham House and Balmoral Castle. Princess Anne, being one of the Queen's most loyal and dedicated children, could have inherited parts of these estates, especially considering that Anne has long been involved in managing the family's properties, particularly the Sandringham estate. But she didn't, and that may have been what pushed the princess to make a move to approach the king. But beyond material assets, Princess Anne also inherited a substantial role in the public and charitable domains. The Queen's extensive patronage of charities and organizations was well known, and it is expected that Anne would continue this legacy. As the royal family's most active member in terms of public service, Anne has been involved with over 300 organizations, and it's speculated that she might have inherited many of the Queen's patronages. Even though Princess Anne is the second eldest child, she isn't going to inherit the throne, or the title of monarch would go to her older brother, King Charles III.
But I think for my brother, this is something he's been waiting for, and he's probably spent more time thinking about it.
However, she might have inherited some of the Queen's diplomatic and soft power due to her natural grace and experience. But with King Charles III inheriting a majority of the late Queen's wealth,
it's a fixture in the royal calendar and one the king was not going to miss.
It leaves Princess Anne in a vulnerable state, especially about her home in Gatcombe Park, the 730-acre estate in Gloucestershire. Purchased by Queen Elizabeth II in 1976 for a sum between £500,000 and £750. It is a vast property that includes a manor house, stables, a polo field, and additional homes occupied by Anne's children. Now, Gatcombe Park is valued at approximately £15 million, and it is widely expected that Anne will leave this estate to her children. However, this inheritance comes with its own set of challenges. In the United Kingdom, inheritance tax is charged at 40% on any estate succeeding the £325,000 threshold, with less specific exemptions or release supply. For Zara Tyndall and Peter Phillips, inheriting such a property could mean facing an inheritance tax bill of around £2,280,000. This is quite a substantial financial burden that would need to be addressed within 6 months of the inheritance. This looming tax obligation has sparked discussions about how the family might navigate such a significant financial challenge. There is a chance that the princess and her family could lose the estate because of the inheritance tax it bears. But how exactly is Princess Anne And why does she already own Gatcombe Park? All there is to know about Princess Anne. Anne, the Princess Royal of the United Kingdom, is the second child and only daughter of Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Phillips, the Duke of Edinburgh, making her the sister of King Charles III, and the aunt to Princes William and Harry. Growing up in the royal spotlight, Anne was always seen as independent, smart, and focused. And unlike some other members of the royal family, she has never been one bother or enticed by the fame of being the daughter of the Queen. Even though she is a part of one of the most famous families in the world, she lives a very low-key life. Princess Anne is the leading military personnel in the royal family, so it is no surprise that her spouses are also in the same line of work as she is. Her first husband, Captain Mark Phillips, was a Royal Cavalry officer in 1973. They couple had 2 children together, Peter Phillips, who was born in 1977, and Zara Tyndall, who was born 1981. However, both children hold no royal title and are more famous for who they are and what they do outside being members of the British royal family. Princess Anne gets a divorce from Mark Phillips in 1992 and then remarries Timothy Lawrence, a former naval officer who had worked closely with her father, Prince Philip. The couple have been together ever since and have protected the royal family together. What is even more impressive about the Princess Royal is her incredibly strong sense of duty. Anne has consistently, over the years, shown that she is one of the hardest-working members of the royal family. She attends hundreds of royal engagements each year and is known for her commitment to charity work, particularly around sports, health, and children's issues. She's even involved in the International Olympic Committee and has been a prominent advocate for the development of equestrian sports. Anne is also known for her no-nonsense attitude. Unlike some other royals, she's not much for public appearances just for the sake of it. She doesn't often engage in the same level of media-friendly activities.
I never remember the passage of time, of course, but no, I was very honoured to be asked to become Colonel-in-Chief of the Royal Newfoundland Regiment, because I think even although I may not have known the specifics of particularly of Beaumont Hamel, but I knew enough about the history of the regiment to know that it was an extraordinary history in its own right.
That other royals might. In fact, she has a reputation for being direct and not too interested in the fame or media attention that often comes with royal life. But here is something about Princess Anne that no one really talks about. The princess actually comes from a family with a rich mix of royal and aristocratic blood. Her paternal side links her to the House of Schleswig-Holstein-Sonderburg, Glucksburg, and her mother's side brings in deep ties to the House of Windsor, not to mention connections to several European royal families. But what good would this relationship and public accolade do her if she can't even secure her inheritance of the vast estate left behind by her mother, the late Queen? Why did the Queen leave Princess Anne with so little inheritance? The Queen's will. In her last will and testament, the late Queen addressed all of her children and grandchildren, leaving them some items both of sentimental and monetary value. She ensured that she split her wealth among the family as she saw fit, giving much and little to those who deserved it. She also left sentimental items like jewelry to her grandchildren to remember her by and carry on the family's legacy. For instance, to Princess Charlotte, the daughter of Kate Middleton and Prince William, she left a prized tiara and several other pieces of jewelry from her large collection. She also gave jewelry to Princess Anne's children, Peter Phillips and Zara Tyndall. To older and more active members of the royal family, the Queen left much more than prized jewels and tiaras. Everyone got a piece of the royal pie, whether large or little. Princess Anne is even set to inherit one of the Queen's private estates, Sandringham House. Her ownership of this property is not absolute, as the Queen intended for Sandringham to be owned by chosen members of the family. This was in an effort to foster peace and familial love among her children and grandchildren. However, because of the strict rule of the British succession and inheritance, the most hard-working royal may not have a lot to show for, and might even lose her home of many decades, because it wasn't bequeathed to her. The Queen split her private and sentimental properties among her children and grandchildren. But what would happen to the bulk of her personal wealth? This includes things like private estates, artwork, and even investments. Thanks to the rules of the royal family, all of this would generally go to the heir of the throne, the current king, King Charles III. It is safe to say that he gets it all, and to an extent he is in charge of making sure the other members of the
King Charles has hosted his first state visit as monarch, welcoming the president.
royal family are well catered for. This is because in the British system, the throne and its accompanying wealth pass down to the next monarch, and along with that, many of the personal assets tied to the royal family. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Not all of the Queen's wealth is automatically inherited by the monarch. The most significant portion of her assets comes from what is known as the Crown Estate, a vast collection of lands and properties that are owned by the reigning monarch but not personally theirs. The Crown Estate isn't passed down personally to the monarch. Rather, it remains part of the institution and is managed by the Crown Estate Commissioners.
King Charles has appeared to briefly lose his patience and scold a guard during the American president's visit. The monarch.
King Charles III now oversees this, but it's not his personal property. Instead, it generates revenue for the sovereign, the reigning monarch, through what's called the sovereign grant, which is a percentage of the Crown Estate's profits. Who owns Gatcombe Park? Princess Anne, the late Queen or King Charles III. What happens to Gatcombe Park? It doesn't take a genius to see that Princess Anne is not entitled to any of the late Queen's estate, at least not as the sole owner. She still co-owns Sandringham with the rest of her family. For someone as hard-working and dedicated to her family as she is, one would expect her to have much more than a truckload of responsibilities after the Queen's death. But as it stands, the Queen's only daughter and favorite child might lose Gatcombe Park, the home she has lived in for decades with her husband and children. Gatcombe Park is a private estate located in Gloucestershire, England. It is best known as the home of Princess Anne, the Princess Royal, as she and her family have lived there for many years. Princess Anne's home at Gatcombe Park has a fascinating history. Originally a 17th-century manor house, it was purchased by Princess Anne in 1976 as a place to raise her family. She lives there with her second husband, Sir Timothy Lawrence, a former naval officer. The estate is also known for its
bravery required to stand up and go.
expansive grounds, including fields and woodlands, which provide a peaceful and private environment for the royal family. Gatcombe Park is famously not open to the public, keeping a relatively low profile compared to other royal residences like Buckingham Palace or Sandringham. However, it's also known for hosting events such as equestrian competitions, as Princess Anne herself is an avid equestrian and has a deep passion for horse riding, which she often incorporates into life at Gatcombe. Rumors have it that King Charles III
Say a few words about my father and why I believe this weekend is so important. Service. My father's first words on entering Westminster Abbey yesterday were a pledge of service. He has dedicated himself to serve others.
could claim Gatcombe Park as his, and this is where the trouble lies. Princess Anne, having bought the property back in 1976 and residing there ever since, disputes such claims to her estate. Her statement shocked the citizens of the United Kingdom as is vehemently standing her ground to protect her home. Since the property rightfully belongs to Princess, the only that would arise is when she wills give it to her children as an inheritance. How are properties and estates passed down in the royal family? The rules of inheritance in the royal family. The royal family's wealth is split across different holdings, and each is passed down in different ways and to different people. The first holding is the Crown Estate, as it is perhaps the most significant asset tied to the British monarchy, but it's also one of the most misunderstood. Yes, it will be managed by the reigning monarch. The Crown Estate is not considered the personal property of the monarch. It is owned in trust for the nation and is therefore not inherited by royal family members. The Crown Estate includes vast tracts of land, urban properties, forests, and seabeds, generating a hefty income. The Crown Estate's income is handed over to the Treasury, and, in return, a portion of the income known as the sovereign grant.
In some respects, I suppose I tend to think it stole a bit from my father, who, lost a lot of the people who would have gone to see him and talk to him and, have those...
Is given to the royal family to cover their official duties. This is not a personal wealth source, but a public funding arrangement. When a monarch dies, the Crown Estate does not pass to the monarch's heirs, but remains under government management. The estate is automatically transferred to the new reigning monarch, but the inheritance is not passed down within the family as part of a personal inheritance. It is essentially a public trust that ensures the estate supports the monarchy in its duties, regardless of who is the monarch. But unlike the Crown Estate, there are private estates that monarchs own personally, and these are passed down within the royal family through inheritance. Notable examples include Sandringham House and Balmoral Castle, two properties that are associated with the royal family's personal wealth. The Sandringham House, located in Norfolk. Sandringham has been in the royal family since 1862. Queen Elizabeth II inherited it from her father, King George VI, and it remains a privately owned royal estate. This estate is passed down to the monarch's heirs, and in 2022, after Queen Elizabeth II's death, King Charles III inherited Sandringham House. Balmoral Castle, situated in the Scottish Highlands, is another private estate that has been in the royal family since 1852. Queen Elizabeth II's family used it as a private retreat, and like Sandringham, it is personally owned. When Queen Elizabeth II passed, King Charles III inherited Balmoral, as he was the eldest child. How will Princess Anne's estate be shared among her children and family? Who will inherit the princess's estate? Who inherits Princess Anne's estate depends on a few factors, including her will and her family's traditions. Just like most members of the British royal family, the details of these matters are kept private until the fixed comes. However, based on established royal customs, predictions can be made for Princess Anne's estate. The first heirs on the list are definitely her children, Peter Phillips and Zara Tyndall. This is assuming she chooses them as her heirs in her will. Peter Phillips, as the eldest, would be the most likely to inherit the majority of the princess's personal estate. However, given that Peter is not an official working royal,
today was the first step of putting a lot of processes in place and taking a lot of operational learnings out of today.
And lives outside the royal circle in a more private manner. He may not receive as many royal assets or official duties as his sister, but he is the son of Princess Anne, and, as such, will have a claim to any personal property or inheritance passed down. Zara Tyndall, Princess Anne's daughter, on the other hand, is also very close to her mother. Zara is more involved with the royal family's official activities than Peter Phillips, especially when it comes to charity work and public engagements. Being Princess Anne's daughter, Zara is also an heir to any personal assets, particularly items with sentimental or personal value, like jewelry or specific family heirlooms that the princess might want her to have. Princess Anne is known to own certain private estates and properties, such as Gatcombe Park, the country estate in Gloucestershire, that she is rumoured to have inherited from her father, Prince Philip. Gatcombe Park is where Princess Anne resides with her family, and it has historical significance within the royal family. Any other private properties or personal assets, like jewelry, family heirlooms, or valuable items, will likely be divided among her children, with the most significant items perhaps being passed to the eldest child, Peter Phillips, or to Zara Tyndall, depending on their relationship with their mother and her personal preferences. Apart from her private estate, Princess Anne may pass down some royal heirlooms or personal collections. Items like jewelry, gifts from family members, or even mementos of royal life are often passed down within the family as part of their legacy. These may be distributed based on Princess Anne's wishes, but often these items are given to children or close family members. Unlike the title of monarch, Princess Anne's title as Princess Royal cannot be passed down through inheritance, as it is a title given to the eldest daughter of the reigning monarch. It is not hereditary. There's a $2 million inheritance tax on Gatcombe Park. How can Princess Anne offset this? Ways to offset the inheritance tax on Gatcombe Park. On of the way, the inheritance tax on Gatcombe Park can be reduced by utilizing the spousal exemption. In the UK, assets passed to a spouse or civil partner are exempt from inheritance tax. If Princess Anne's estate passes to her husband, Sir Timothy Lawrence, the transfer of Gatcombe Park would not be subject to inheritance tax due to the spousal exemption. This means that the estate could be passed without immediate tax implications, and the surviving spouse can continue to hold the property without incurring any taxes. However, when the surviving spouse eventually passes away, the inheritance tax exemption can be transferred, increasing the amount that can be passed on tax-free. This double exemption significantly reduces the tax burden on subsequent heirs. Another way is to maximize the nil rate band and residence nil rate band. Inheritance tax in the UK applies to estates over the threshold of £325,000. However, there are two primary allowances that can significantly reduce the taxable estate value. First is the nil rate band, which is the standard tax-free allowance of £325,000 per individual. If Princess Anne's estate is structured properly, this amount can be offset against the overall value of the estate, reducing the amount subject to inheritance tax. The residence nil rate band is the second for properties like Gatcombe Park. The residence nil rate band currently provides an additional £175,000 allowance per person if the property is passed on to direct descendants like their children and grandchildren. When combined with the nil rate band, this can provide a £500,000 tax-free allowance per person. Another highly effective strategy for reducing inheritance tax of the Gatcombe Park is gifting assets during Princess Anne's lifetime. Under the UK's inheritance tax laws, gifts made during life are exempt from inheritance tax, provided the donor survives for 7 years after making the gift. Gifting Gatcombe Park, or portions of it, to Peter Phillips or Zara during Princess Anne's lifetime would lower the overall value of the estate subject to inheritance tax. This strategy allows Princess Anne to gradually reduce the estate value over time, spreading the tax burden and avoiding a large inheritance tax bill when the estate passes. Using trusts is also another powerful tool for mitigating inheritance tax, especially for estates like Gatcombe Park, which may have sentimental or historical value. There are several types of trusts that could be appropriate for Princess Anne's estate. A discretionary trust allows Princess Anne to pass assets, including Gatcombe Park, to her heirs without specifying an exact beneficiary. Instead, the trustees can decide who benefits from the estate, potentially spreading the inheritance tax burden across several generations. Trusts can help manage wealth efficiently and reduce the immediate inheritance tax impact, as the assets are legally removed from the estate. Princess Anne trusts could also place Gatcombe Park in a trust for future generations to ensure that the estate is passed down tax efficiently, preserving wealth for the family without triggering a substantial inheritance tax bill each time the property is passed on. If parts of Gatcombe Park are used for agricultural purposes, whether through farming, forestry, or other forms of land management, it may qualify for agricultural property relief. The agricultural property relief allows agricultural property to be passed on without incurring inheritance tax, provided certain conditions are met. This can be particularly beneficial if parts of Gatcombe Park are used for farming or agriculture, and Princess Anne's family continues to use the estate in this way. These are all tax strategies to help the family manage the financial burden that will come with keeping Gatcombe Park. The estate holds a high sentimental value to Princess Anne and her children, so it is very unlikely that it will be sold. Would Princess Anne have to give up her home, or would Zara Tyndall and Peter Phillips sell off some of their other properties to keep their inheritance? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section. Would you like to see more videos like this? Click on the next video on your screen. You'll love it.